much. I really appreciate it. I love being invited to speak at Dublin Groups because it's home both where I live, but it's also home where my heart is. When my husband and I got engaged, I had worked for the city of Dublin, but was working for Franklin County at the time. And he was pretty confident. He proposed, and then the next day we were set up with realtors, so he believed I was going to say yes. And we only looked at homes in Dublin. I can't imagine calling any other place home, and I feel fortunate to see so many friendly faces and to have the opportunity to meet new friends and neighbors today. So thanks again for having me. I have the true pleasure of working at the Columbus Downtown Development Corporation and Capital South. Downtown Columbus is important. My boss said, "You're going to Dublin. What are you going to talk about downtown?" And for me, downtown is really the heart of it all. It can't be a suburb of nothing. When we talk about ourselves nationally, downtown is that image that people have. And we have a great partnership with the President's Cup. And I suppose I shouldn't say nationally because that was an international win for downtown and an international win for the city of Dublin. I loved Freddie Couples' quote when he said he's been coming here for 22 years, but it was the first time he had been to downtown Columbus. And he couldn't believe he was missing it all these years, that it was so beautiful. And I have to say I was really grateful he had been missing it all these years, because it wasn't always like this. We've had, like many communities, some ups and downs, and I'm proud to talk about some of the renaissance and revitalization efforts that we have now. In 2000, the Mayor Michael Coleman, and the business community really came together and said, we can't continue this trend or downtown will be a ghost town. We had lost residents and we had lost businesses. At its height, downtown had more than 30,000 residents, and at its low point in 2000 census, we had fewer than 3,000 residents. The good news is we're really on the upswing. We have more than 7,000 residents now, even with a huge housing crisis. I'm going to talk about a lot of those projects now, but I'm really interactive. If you have a question and I'm talking about it, feel welcome just to jump in and make this a dialogue. The projects that I'm talking about are both those that have been completed and those that are under work. But like Dublin, the reason downtown has experienced so much success is because we have elected leadership, community leadership, and business leadership that all believe in the same goal. A lot of our projects, in the height of the recession, we raised $45 million for one of our projects and didn't have one organization back down on their commitment or one organization even ask for an extension. In 2007 and 2008, we were able to do that because people believed in the dream. So who are we? I'll give a 2-minute brief announcement. We're sort of, I always call it alphabet soup, or CDC, or Cap South. We're basically two organizations for tax purposes, but we have one goal, and that's to make downtown Columbus the best place to live, work, and play. We have a 15-member board made up of the senior business leadership of the region that you can probably guess, and one staff, but my lawyer would say I have to say we're two organizations, and that's because Capital South was formed in 1974 when we had some pretty seedy elements just south of the State House, and the legislatures were like, hey, we want to get rid of this. And so Capital South was formed, and it took 12 years, but in 1986 the plots were put together for City Center. In 1989 that was opened, and that's what Capital South was formed to do. CDC was formed after the 2000 mayor came in, and the community said we need to do something to stop this flight of businesses and residents. And in 2002, CDC was formed to really implement a business plan that the business community and elected leadership put together. And then in 2007, they were aligned, and that's when my boss, Guy Worley, came on, and I'd worked for him before, and he recruited me, and it's been a great ride for the last 8 years. So why does downtown matter? We're in this interesting time where millennials and boomers are two of the largest generations. Millennials will be one of the largest generations to be in the workforce. And they want a livable, walkable, pedestrian-friendly community. I'm Gen X, and they don't want what I wanted. They want to be close to where they work. I love this line. They want to live where they do their living. They want to work where they do their living. And I don't have to sell this here. You guys are doing it in your own community. You are making that Bridge Street project. You're creating density. You're creating a walkable community. When I worked for the city of Dublin in 1998 to 2001, those weren't the tenants that the city was advancing on because those weren't the tenants that the community wanted. You guys are responding to what this next generation wants, and so is downtown, and I think that's great. A lot of times after the power breakfast, people ask me, oh, do you feel like the city of Dublin is competing with you? And I think absolutely not. I think we are both providing what the community needs. And there isn't a one-size-fits-all. There are a lot of benefits that Dublin has that downtown could never and can never offer. And there's benefits that downtown offers that Dublin's not going to set themselves up for. So I just think it's great that we're both working towards the direction of livable, walkable, denser communities. Redoing riverfronts, creating parklands, because that's what the community wants. That's what this broader community wants. And the more we can provide places for people to stay, I mean, you've heard it a million times. We don't have beaches, we don't have mountains. Our natural resources are people. Beaches and mountains don't leave, people do. We need to create the reason they stay. And I think Dublin is a great organization, great community, business and elected leadership that have come together and say, we want to be that place to keep people. And I'm proud to be a resident. Our success story began when we created the 2002 plan, but for 5 years nothing really happened until we got control of the Lazarus building. Lazarus was a great family entity, 1909, haberdashery. The Lazarus family is still very strong in downtown, but they had sold their interest to Federated, and Federated pulled out. Here's a 1 million square foot building, and it could have been the largest boarded up building. Instead, some of our business leaders, Les Wexner, John F. Wolf, they went to Federated and said, you can pull out, but give us the land. And so they did. Federated gave us the building. We were able to buy their land for a very discounted cost. The parking lot surrounded it. And that's been the tipping point for the River South neighborhood. The Lazarus building, again, could have been the largest boarded up building. Instead, it's the largest green rehab in the country. 2,000 employees work there. And a week doesn't go by that I don't have somebody asking me if they can move in. 100% leased. We couldn't put another person in that building. They are cramming people in because so many people want to work there. It's a hub of state offices, private sector, and economic development engines. And it's aptly named. It truly did come back from the dead. I figured you'd appreciate my little Lazarus joke.
That was classic, I tell you.
And the nice part is everything else I'm going to talk about happened because Lazarus happened. Nobody would have made an investment if Lazarus had been boarded up. And so we took this iconic building where people had these great memories of. I mean, I remember going down to Lazarus, I had my dress on, my white gloves, and seeing Santa and going to the chintz room. And other people had that. And I think when we talk about economic development, we talk about redevelopment, especially of downtowns, we are talking about memory creation. We're talking about placemaking. And sometimes we're talking about 2.0 placemaking. We had to take the Lazarus building and we had to transform it into something that it wasn't while keeping that essence. And so I'm going to talk about something that we're going to get there. So this is another thing. So City Center. I mean, I used to come and talk to groups and people back in 2007, 8, 9, and people would politely nod. I mean, they were always very nice to me. But you could tell that they just wanted me to be quiet and talk about what we're going to do at City Center. And we didn't have a plan. In 2007, the mall stopped paying their rent. We had, thankfully, never sold the land. We had always sold we had leased the improvement, but always retained the fee rights. And so when they stopped paying their rent, we could get it back. So we got City Center Mall back for free, but had no idea what to do with it. There were not a lot of plans at the time that said that there were not a lot of building plans that told us what could be done with it. We looked at everything, 10 different ideas for what we could do with this building. We looked at keeping it, we looked at refabbing it, we looked at adding on to it, and finally what we realized is the best thing we could do with it was tear it down and create a clean green slate and create something new for a community. City Center, and oftentimes I show my prom picture and City Center, both 1989, bad time for fashion, bad time for architecture. It's just, no windows, 3-story building. I mean, it didn't engage with the community. When you talk to people at its height, City Center, in its first 12 weeks, City Center had 5 million visitors. In its first year, people from 31 states visited it. I never deny its success when it was successful. It had a 10-year upswing and a 10-year downswing, and in the end, a 1 million square foot mall was occupied by 5,000 square feet of subways and chicken shops. It was the most expensive parking walkthrough that you could get, and it really didn't fit into downtown. the rest of downtown started to really thrive. We had the Arena District, we had the Scioto Mile under construction, but everyone looked at City Center as a barometer. So we had to accept that challenge, and we had to figure out what to do. And it was one of those things where it was a time that we had to be right, not quick. It was much better that we make the right decision, because this parcel really had something, people cared. I think because it was the best shopping between New York and Chicago, it made us feel like a big city. It was our first big win on a national level, and so we had to be respectful of that. And I had calls on a daily basis calling me every name in the book. And it was, my husband would get very upset because they'd call me on my cell phone, they'd talk to me in the grocery store, and it was on every blog that I was such an idiot. How could we tear down this mall? This was the worst thing. We were creating a place for homeless people. Then we created Columbus Commons. It started off as a 9-acre park. First year, 300,000 people. Second year, 1 million people. It is a nationally award-winning park, and it did exactly what we said it would do. It would catalyze development, and it would bring people downtown. And this is my daughter, Audrey. Yeah. And I always show her because she is a great focus group for me. We do 250 events at the park. We brought Picnic with the Pops down there. A lot of people didn't like that. They've had increased attendance, not just in numbers, but in diversity of who's coming. So they're really building that audience for future years. We've had everyone from Leonard Skinner to Adina Menzel to Blues Traveler and Gin Blossoms, and local acts. And so I think Columbus Commons has really become downtown's playground in the time that we've had it. These are some more pictures. That picture, we've had 8,000 to 10,000 people there. And we always said it was going to be a mixed-use development when we announced it. But that was an interesting thought when we had to get to the mixed-use development. The bottom picture is that during the holidays, City Center had a moment of time in people's hearts for the holidays. We had to recreate that. We always said we're never going to get to what City Center was or what people felt when they went there, but we wanted to take some of those emotions and have people create new memories. I had a woman come up to me at one of our family-friendly events. Our board said, hey, young professionals get downtown. Families have abandoned downtown. So they said create a ton of events that will drive families downtown. So we do. We've got family fun days and a family day on every Friday and tons of activities, a harvest fair, which is different when you do it among skyscrapers. I always say that. The difference in our harvest fair than the great one that Washington Township puts on is that you're surrounded by skyscrapers and you see people from our entire community who may not have access to go to a pumpkin patch, yet we create one right downtown. And so we have had a lot of success in doing that. A woman came up to me and she said, I feel really badly. I have been trashing you for years. And I was like, oh, I feel badly too now. I didn't know that you did. And she said, I never thought this would work. I came down here with a full intention of coming up to you and saying how horrible this was, but we've had a lot of fun. And I haven't seen any homeless people, and I feel really safe, and there's these beautiful flowers. Right. We actually had a plan. And the plan was to provide these great opportunities for people and to change what people think of downtown. Downtown's one of the safest districts. It's actually interesting. But that's not the perception. And everybody in here understands that perception is reality. So we had to change that one person at a time. People said, why do you pay to have Blues Traveler come in and give a free concert? Because I believe I have a great product, and that's downtown. But I have to get people down here. And sometimes you come down, you have a great experience, you feel safe, you've got your opportunity to park and it's not that big of a problem, or go down the one-way streets and it's not that difficult. And then maybe when you look to do something else, you might go to the Ohio Theater, or you might look to locate your business downtown, or you might go to the Scioto Mile. We believe that we are a layering of experiences, and we just have to get you down once and you're hooked. This is the Scioto Mile, although Audrey is my only child. In a lot of ways, this was my first child. When we started the Scioto Mile in 2007, this is the project, $45 million public-private project. No one believed in us except a core group of people. We were lucky that that core group of people included some key funders. And AEP and the city came in and they each committed $10 million. So they got us halfway there. And we had to do the other half. And there were a lot of great people who came up to the table and they really wrote that check. And we had some people who said, I just don't believe anything is going to happen. I don't believe this is really going to be successful. I'm going to support you because you've asked and we have a strong relationship, but I don't believe it's going to be successful. Well, anyone who tells you there was a real ribbon cutting at the Scioto Mile didn't attend the meeting, didn't attend the grand opening. The mayor, Mike Coleman, and Mike Morris were both very excited about this, and they were saying, "You did a great job, no, you did a great job." And this little kid had waited long enough. He ran through the river, he ran in the fountain. There were 5,000 people. We were at a fire marshal capacity, and it continues to bring 1 million people, nationally and internationally award-winning park. And it is one of the iconic moments and iconic images in our city. And it was because a few people believed in it and put their money where their mouth is. And all these things, so parks are great, and I love parks, and you have to create a sense of place. But the best part about parks is that they actually really do catalyze development. We had to look to New York when we started this, and then the Bryant Park, Central Park, they all catalyzed development. Well, now we have our own parks to look at. Scioto Mile and Columbus Commons have catalyzed almost $200 million in private investment, and that has been in residential properties. We created a walkable and livable neighborhood, and these are some of the projects. These are the completed ones. We've got High Point, and it's right along Columbus Commons. When we created Columbus Commons, 9-acre green space, but we always said it will be a mixed-use development. We always said there will be apartments along High Street and a corporate tower along High and 3rd, Third and Rich. And when we, sooner than expected, had a national developer want to build these, the community again were outraged. The same people, I swear it was the same people, were calling me idiots again. How could you take away anything from our park? Well, we'd always planned for this to be that. I promise you it will make sense. It's going to create shade where we couldn't plant trees. There were a lot of benefits, and people really create that evolution of the park, that new feeling of the park. And so it went up, and then everybody got it, and it made more sense. And all the people who are there, the 300 residents, are engaging in the park, making the park feel different. The park evolved. High Point, that was the first, or River South Annex 1, that was the first one. Mike DeSantis, who normally goes to the suburbs, built this right across from the Lazarus building, and 200 apartments. When someone moves out, they paint it, and someone moves back in. They don't have a vacancy rate. Two things in progress, 250 High. The first high tower to go on High Street since the 1980s. NBBJ is developing it. Daimler Kaufman is NBBJ is designing it. Daimler Kaufman is developing it. 6 floors of commercial over 6 floors of residential, and again, going to change and add to the neighborhood. And this is the Julian. It's an old factory, and they're changing it into loft-style apartments. Both of them will be open later this year. Again, we're adding more units. And then Annex, they had such a good experience, they're coming back for Annex 2 and Annex 3. So when the time they open this time next year, 4 corners of High Street will be residential. This is the first time in a generation that will be the case. Here's what that'll look like. And, you know, we can live there and we can work there, but we also want to eat and play there, right? And so Milestone opened along the Scioto Mile. When we knew that we had to build a restaurant there. Scioto Mile's on Civic Center Drive. It's aptly named. It's all civic buildings before they could get flood insurance. And so there was no place to put some great restaurants. We had to build it in the park. And if you haven't been to Milestone, I highly recommend it. The food is good. The view is even better. And then Liz Lessner came, and she decided to redo the Chintz Room. And for those of you who know Liz, she's great. She does Surly Girl Betty's and Dirty Frank's. And she wanted to do this, and we had old Chintz Room memorabilia. And so she met with Mary Lazarus, and this was her joke, not mine. She said, Mary has a different kind of blue hair than mine. And so it was Liz's sort of blue-dyed hair and Mary's hair. And they all experienced the Chintz Room, and it's a completely different Chintz Room from the White Glove Chintz Room. It's got Liz's feel to it, and sort of downtown's feel to it. And it opened at the end of last year.